I've bought one of these quantizer banks from synthesizers.com. Now, I've got one blank space where I could put this. I've got to mess about with a power supply and sort a different power supply out for this. This needs 6 volts and plus minus 15, whereas the Moog, I can get a plus minus 15 out of the power supply, but then it's 5, so it's too low. So I've got to fiddle about with power. Anyway, the problem is this. If I put this in the blank space here, and I then decide to add the optional extra, which is sort of a MIDI in and out and a 4th channel and things, that means another one of these 5U plates, and then I'm stuck. I haven't got any spaces for it. So what I thought was, I'm just going to knock together another box to sit on top of this one, and then I can put loads and loads of 5U modules in there. But at the same time, I also want to add 19-inch rack mount gear. So I'm kind of thinking, if I, what I've done, here's one I've removed earlier. Now this is the fixed filter bank. This is the Moog 914. Beautiful piece of engineering. That's yeah, sorry. But, right. So, if I build another top box, and I make it so that I can put 5 rack mount 19-inch 1U height inside there. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then make possibly a panel with the jack in and outs, which connect to the in and outs on the back of whichever unit I decide to stick in there. That will be useful, I think, anyway. The problem with, well, it's not a problem really, it's nice, it's a beautiful detail. This is actually walnut, this wood is. It's proper walnut, it's proper wood, the stuff that grows on trees. And I've been around a few of the wood yards and things, and I cannot find any good walnut wood anywhere. Well, not big enough to make a box like this. And even if you go to places like in England, we've got B&Q, suddenly you see all these big sheets of walnut, and you think, brilliant, and you go over to it, and actually it's just plastic coated breakfast cereal basically. So even though it looks nice, by the time you've cut the ends, it's going to look something that resembles Weetabix, I guess. And I'm not going to buy one of these boxes because I think they run into several £100, dollars or whatever, and then you've got to get it shipped over to England, and then you've got to pay customs on it, and no, it's far too expensive. I just need a box, stick it on the top, make it look close as possible, varnish it, you know, and that's it. Because one of the things with one of these synthesizers is there's never enough. You want to keep on adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. So I'm going to try my best to make a box. There's a great place in Brighton, and it's called the Wood Store, and what they do is they just recycle wood, and you can go along and pick bits and pieces, and they're very good value for money. So I went down yesterday and I searched everywhere for walnut. I can't find anything but these strips, and these strips are just the right colour and they look really nice, but they're not big pieces, so I can't make the entire thing with it. So what I'm going to have to do is slice these all the way down the centre to make a sort of an edging or kind of a beading, so at least when you look at it from this direction it should look like a proper Moog cabinet. Now the only wood I've got to sort of fill in is this sort of laminate, and I'm guessing, you know, this is going to look horrible if that is seen on the front. That's why I need to cut this stuff down and make the lip to go around it. And then this I can sort of varnish it, and it's going to be off the top and down the sides, and maybe not as noticeable. I don't know, I'll see when it turns out. Those were safety goggles, and they are dynamic ear protectors. Okay, progress so far. I've put the box together, and I've found these nice strips of walnut, and I've routed them out. So there's the sort of little groove, so these pieces can fit in just nicely like that. And this is a standard 5U size piece. Also, what I've managed to do, there you go, I'll just show you. I think this is going to look reasonably okay when it's all kitted out in the future sometime. But the other thing, one of the main reasons I wanted to build this is you can buy these things for rack mount gear, 19-inch rack mount gear. And yes, I know I've got to chop this down a little bit, but these are reasonably cheap. I mean, they're about £1.20 or something. But the idea is that I'll be able to add another 13 units that way. And if I put these pieces in, I should be able to add 4, maybe 5. I think it's going to be 4 though. 4 pieces of rack mount gear that I can use direct with the synthesizer. So yeah, I think it's going to be 4. And then I'm going to have to get a blanking plate, one of those half U rack mount blanking plates to go on the top maybe. But then at least I'll have some sort of effects that I can add to the rest of the Moog synthesizer, which is going to be underneath this. And then just start putting these all the way along there. And yeah, you get the idea of what it's hopefully going to look like when it's finished. And right, so yeah, there I am so far. So what I've got to do now is do a bit more sanding down, make it nice and smooth, and then varnish it in a walnut colour, hopefully, and make it at least look like it's supposed to be part of the Moog system, which is not going to be easy, but I've put the first layer of colour onto the wood to try and get it to look a little bit like walnut, even though it's not. You can see it's just ply, but I've got a little bit of walnut around the front anyway, a bit of trim to try and deceive people into thinking it's a walnut cabinet. Now, figuring out what to do on the back here, I've found an IEC cable there, socket, sorry, it's very early, I've just woken up, and that's going to go there, and then get this to slot into that piece on the back there. I've still got to trim it here, it doesn't quite sit in properly, but that should leave me a little gap along the bottom here, just in case I want to add some extra things, some more cables and bits and pieces. So what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit of a sand down, and then maybe varnish these on the back as well. I was going to varnish the inside as well, but I think that's a bit daft, isn't it? But yeah, the story so far is I've now got the 19-inch rack pieces here, so I can put 4.5 U. 4.5. Yeah, it's a pity it couldn't be a 5, but I've ordered a sort of a half size piece of metal to try and fill in the gap, because it's not going to look right with a little sort of 3/4 inch gap in there. There you go, I've got the half U 19-inch piece of metal there. I bought 2 of them just in case, because the initial idea was to drill a load of holes along there and actually put in some jack connectors so that I can jack directly into the back of all these 19-inch rack things. But to be honest with you, what I really want to do is just put them all on a panel and put them on the side there, so I've got all the ins and outs actually running down where all the 19-inch rack pieces are. So yeah, anyway, so there's one I made earlier, and the original Moog panel, if we can get it off without destroying it. There we go. Maybe not. Here we go. So these are the proper Moog ones, and this is one I've made up, and it takes a little bit of effort to get it just right, but then suddenly everything clicks into place and correct size, etc, etc. The problem is making that fold down the side of it, just like so, because here's another one, and this one won't fit, it's too wide. And I've also tried to paint one as well to make it look like the Moog as well, proper panel, but it looks a bit amateurish down the edge. I've got to work on that. But basically, I'm going to make up all the aluminium panels to run across here and try and get them in line with what's going off here to give it the impression that it's part of the one system. Now, you can buy the aluminium panels from someone called Brimel Components, and they're reasonably cheap. I think these are about £3.50 or something, and then just chop them up, and that will make, considering the folds of course, that will make about 5. So that's going to make at least 5. I think I've got 13 spacers up there. Now then, rabbiting along. So what I'm going to do really is, the first unit I'm going to make is the jacks, ins and outs for the 19-inch rack here. And I think what I've got to do is make a double one, so I can have ins on the left, outs on the right, and then line the ins and outs with the actual units. That way if you change any of the units around, it doesn't really matter. And then just have the jack leads coming off the back, so you can plug them into whatever you wish to change. So I'm going to try and make a double one of these and put the jacks in. And I think what I should do is double up the jacks, so there's 2 lots of inputs and 2 lots of outputs for each mono channel. So yeah, that way you'll be able to sort of just use some little connectors like these, and then send one signal in and then jump them all together, so you're sending the same signal to everything, a bit like the multiples on here. So let me just go and make a double panel, and I'll show you how to make these panels as well in another video, and put some jack sockets on there and see what it looks like. So there we go, almost complete. This is my double sized rack, and what I've done is I've just used basic silver marker just to put a line in between each of these 2 sockets and 2 sockets, because they're going to be connected together. That way you can send in 2 inputs or bring out 2 sets of outputs to go elsewhere, so on and so forth. So I basically set it up so that these 2 rows line up with the top 19-inch rack, and then the next 2 and the next 2 and the next 2 for the 4 different 19-inch racks. That's why they're slightly offset, because of that half U rack piece that sits at the bottom there. So visually you should be able to kind of work out what's happening. Because I haven't got any lettering, basically this will be the in on this row, and this will be the out on this row, and then it will be left right, left right, left right, left right, maybe. You can also, with these stereo jack sockets, because they have a kind of a built-in switch with them, you could also solder them up so that if you just plugged into the left, then it would also come out on the left and the right channel inside the effect, unless you plugged in another jack plug for the right. Don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, I'm sure you know what I mean. So I'm going to put these last 2 pieces in now. Oh, by the way, if you remember the mixer I took apart a long time ago, an old Behringer mixer, That's where all these jack sockets have come from. I just knock them off the board. I use a hot air gun and heat the back up and just tap them off, and they all just fall off, and they're all completely usable and they're reasonably good quality. Well, they should be alright for what I want to use them for anyway. And just put these last two pieces on here, and then I'll go and try and see what it looks like on the machine. Ta-da! Sorted. Okay, I haven't put the cables on yet. As I explained earlier, I'm waiting for some cable, and then I'll just run off into the backs of these. But that will sit there just nicely. And as you can see, they're lined up to whatever you want to put in the 19-inch rack down the left-hand side. In's there and out's there. Simple. And that will give me a load of room behind it, because this is not going to be a deep unit. It's completely passive. There's no electronics on it. But that will give me enough room at the back here to start putting all these wall warts in. And they can all just sort of bunch up out of the way there, out of the way, so that there's no electronics going to be pushing against it. And then start building it up. I have gone off ever so slightly though. These aren't perfectly lined up. I suppose I could live with that, you know? That one needs repainting. But yeah, basically, there we go. Job's a good one. If you like that, give us a thumbs up and subscribe if possible, because that always helps. And thanks very much for watching. This will be continued. Bye bye. Got to solder all these now.